One channel, different shows, everything entertaining. Make a Path presents Let's Talk. Before we get started, I do want to mention that some of you probably already seen my reaction video, and I did incorporate some things in there just to be funny. Kind of like a comedian does. A comedian will make fun of everything. It doesn't mean that they hate what they're making fun of. As far as this standalone episode, I thought this episode was okay. Now, if you will allow me to explain myself and my rating, we could get right into it. Let's talk The Walking Dead, episode 504, SLABTOWN. Deadheads. One interesting thing with the SLABTOWN, aka the hospital, this is a place run by people who are smarter than the people at Terminus. They capture the weak ones and enslave them. They kill off the strong ones who can uprise. And that was Terminus's problem. They took in everybody, even people who can take it over. And that's what happened to Terminus. That's why I say that. Anyhow, it's just a little observation I saw. Even though I'm not going nuts for this episode, the writing was very, very good. And that shows and shines through in some of the dialogue, especially Don Lerner's dialogue. However, there's some inconsistencies, and we have the fractured wrist. Beth is shooting a gun with this wrist and falling down an elevator shaft with this wrist, and she doesn't even wince once. And I believe that there's a problem with that on the actor and the writers. That's a fail. The second thing that I thought was bad writing is spoon-feeding us the doctor information. The doctor at the hospital told Beth the wrong medication to give to the injured doctor, and that's the secret. That is what the one cop whispered to the other cop. That is why Don Lerner wanted to throw their resources into healing this injured doctor. And then in the doorway, everything was done. There's no more questioning going on. Beth is like, oh, I gave him whatever. And he said, no, that's not what I said. This is what I said. That dialogue there, it's just spoon-feeding. You didn't need it. Because later on, they reveal the truth anyway. And the truth is Beth finds the doctor's name tag, the injured doctor's name tag. So she knows that he's a doctor now. And she puts two and two together. And then they had that talk. And that's when at the very end of the episode, after the talk about killing the injured doctor, she picks up the scissors or the knife and heads over their way. Let's go to the highlighting of the writing. The highlighting absolutely was some of Don Lerner's dialogue. And not only that, it was also the actor who played Dawn. Did a fantastic job. She was absolutely 100% believable. But some of the best writing and the best dialogue in this episode was when they brought in that woman who was bit in the arm. Her and Officer Don Lerner have a really nice back and forth. The injured woman says, I'm not going back to them. Don immediately says, you don't have to. The injured woman says, you can't control them, and Don says, I will. Now this is showing us some type of compassion. She didn't want to let that woman die. She did want to save her life, and I believe we could throw all the whole experimenting ideas out right now. Dawn is just another survivor, you know, a messed up survivor, but she's just another survivor. And this is very important dialogue, I feel, because you have saying what's going on in the hospital in a nutshell and saying what's wrong with it. The beatings, the rapes, the slave labor, pretty much. Don Lerner is trying to say, I will, you know, protect you or keep you safe. And the woman is right. She's like, you can't control them. You know what I mean? And I think that that's true, because the look on Don Lerner's face was this look that, you know, that's accurate. You know what I mean? If Don Lerner stops the rape, stops the abuse with the male cops, there is a chance that they could just revolt and take it back. And like I said earlier, she could be the victim. She could be the one being raped. And if that's the case, they won't keep her alive. And I believe that she knows that. They will just kill her and take over the hospital. Now, the next dialogue was between Don and Beth. They were going back and forth, and I love this line. And I love it. Don told Beth, out there, you're nothing except dead or somebody's burden. And for a part of that, that is true. Beth is in the transformation from going from that is true, and she's transforming into that not being the case. And that is reflected in the end of this episode. And between that dialogue and the reflection of that transformation, that really, really helped pull it all home for me. And then again, you see some of the compassion in Dawn's responses, where she says, some people aren't meant for this life, and that's okay. And I really feel like she honestly believes that. But then we see the duality in Dawn. She says, as long as they don't bring down the people who are. That, I think that dialogue is awesome, and I think it explains Dawn Lerner better than anything else in this episode. 2 lines. The one was her compassion. Some people aren't meant for this life, and that's okay. And you even see the compassion on her face when she says it, and that is okay. She is understanding of that. However, it's conditional. Only if they do not bring down the ones who are. And that's just an example of some really good writing in this episode. Again, some inconsistencies, and also the acting. There was some decent acting. I don't really think there was a character so much that stood out as, I couldn't get into the bite victim. I'll be honest with you. I think that was the low part for me. Those scenes didn't groove for me. But Emily Kinney, let's talk about the star of this episode. Emily Kinney did do a fantastic job with the acting, minus one scene. The part where she accidentally killed the injured doctor, and they go ahead and take Noah into the office, presumably, and beat him. That little scene with Beth kind of wiggling around in the doctor's arms with this, horrified look on her face as if they're beating her sister or something, or Judith, for that matter. It just felt like overacting to me. It didn't feel real. It felt like she was just squirming in the doctor's arms, acting it out, not actually being... If she's trying to proceed forward, I didn't really see this movement as if the doctor's trying to really hold her back. It just kind of looked like she wiggled and they were playing along. The realism wasn't there for me. The expression on her face, the crying out, I know she is a compassionate person. However, it just felt like too much. It was too much. Just in season 4, we got this Beth who was like, oh, my boyfriend's dead? Do you mind? I'm writing a song. But now we have a different Beth who was just, really putting it on. I do not hate Beth, but I will not lie to you. I cannot relate to that character. And that's understandable, because I'm a guy, I'm older. All viewers are not supposed to relate to every single character on the show. But just because you don't relate to a character does not mean you hate them, not whatsoever. And it has nothing to do with the actress. It has everything to do with the character. Beth is probably the only character who can be trapped in a hospital, well, besides Eugene and maybe Judith. But she's the only character besides them two who can be trapped in a hospital, surrounded by a bunch of sharp objects. You can roam freely, which means you can sneak up on guard, and you also have every opportunity to be alone with them. You have every opportunity from the beginning to escape, to fight back. And it really doesn't look like it would take much. Stab the guard, take their gun, you might have to get hands dirty, but I just feel any other character besides Eugene and Judith would have got out of there day one, you know what I mean? Now, we touched over some low points, but the highlight of this episode was the escape. I thought it was awesome seeing that bite victim. I'm speculating here, but I'm almost sure that was her arm, and I thought that was also a gory scene that they did, and must have gave Beth a flashback or maybe a thought, some remembrance of her father, and that probably brings back a lot of memories. Bite, amputation, probably shocked her a little bit, so I thought that was a nice touch, having that bite victim's arm on that ledge when Beth was lowered down the elevator shaft. Real quick, let's bounce. I just thought of this about the bite arm victim. Now, when Beth went in looking for the key to escape, she went into Dawn Lerner's office, right? And she found the key, and she noticed what appeared to me was the bite victim who had her arm chopped off killed herself. It looked like with a pair of scissors. I'm not sure if anyone else got that. That's what I got from it. I believe that she killed herself in Dawn's office, maybe to actually, reanimate and kill, hopefully, she's probably hoping, kill either Dawn or any other cop who would have came in the room. I thought this was one out of possibly 2 very crucial mistakes this episode played with not utilizing the story the right way for the character. Now, in the office, we know that Mick Rapey comes in and he's pressing up on her hardcore, pretty much. She's going to get it right here. He gets her up against the desk, and Beth grabs the jar of lollipops and she smacks Mick Rapey, Lollipop Man, over the head with the jar, knocking him to the ground. At which point, coincidentally and just conveniently enough, Zombie comes to life, bites out his throat, and then munches on his chest cavity once she leaves. 2 problems I have with this scene that I think are huge is, 1, we missed a completely awesome opportunity, or a possibly completely awesome opportunity, to have Beth handle her own, besides whacking a guy over the head with a glass jar of lollipops. There should have been a struggle. There should have been, for a moment, a chance that she was going to lose her life. She smacks the cop, he goes down, grabs a hold of her maybe, and then let's say he's a little bit fuzzy, he pops Beth right in the ribs. She folds like a lawn chair. He snatches her up by the throat and he starts choking the life out of her, and we are thinking this is it for Beth. This can't be happening. He's so angry, he's spitting as he's grunting, he's still a little dazed, but he's just choking the shit out of her, kind of like they did for Rick. They did the whole Beth is the new sheriff in town at the end of season 4, and then waking up in the hospital on purpose. They filmed it the exact same way, even in one take, which they changed in editing, which was a mistake. They filmed her scene the same way Rick did in season 1, waking up from his coma. So this would have been another parallel to when the governor was choking the life out of Rick. You know what I mean? But this time, instead of Michonne coming to Rick's rescue, the zombie, the walker, came to Beth's rescue, latches onto McRape's throat, takes a chunk out. He lets go of Beth. He has no other choice. Elbow shoves the walker, even though it's too late. It's instinctive survival instincts. Beth takes a breath, and with the last bit of energy she can muster, she just, on her back, on the ground, uses both legs and kicks the shit out of McRape right in the chest, sending him backwards, flying back into the arms of the zombie, who's kind of halfway attached to him anyway. The walker takes the final bite right out of his throat. End of story. She gets up wheezing, tries to get her breath back. She's a little fuzzy, but we're in suspense because, Beth, you gotta get out of there. There's still a walker there. The walker is gnawing on his throat. She goes to leave, realizes he has a gun, and that would be a great tool to escape. You need a gun, She's still kind of struggling to get some air in her lungs. She goes over to the zombie, and then we get another suspenseful moment that they completely took out of what we actually got. She real quick just grabbed the gun, but we should have had a really suspenseful moment where she's going down to get the gun. Is she gonna distract the walker? Is the walker going to attack her? Will she get the gun? Won't she get the gun? There's like a good solid 10 seconds of what the is gonna happen, and then she gets the gun. The walker looks up maybe, or starts to get up, and she gets up out of there. You know what I mean? That's just an example of something where it just felt like they took the easy route with Beth. Back to the escape, which I thought was very well done. I wouldn't have done it any other way, but I would have made it a little bit harder to get all the headshots. Anyhow, in the parking lot, we do see a fleet of these vehicles. I just want to point that out. So now we know they have a fleet of vehicles with the crosses on them. What else do they have there at the hospital? Do they have an RV? Do they have a big vehicle that our group eventually, when they attack the hospital, they can get? Just that. I'm just wondering, Also, with the escape, I do think it's a huge fail on the writers and the director for not coaching the actor and the actor herself to not wince a little bit in pain unless there's really something not wrong with her wrist, unless that's, something different. But that was a fail. Another fail is the smell. Back in the olden days when they had the plagues and people were literally throwing their piss and shit out of their window into the alley, a lot of women would wear a necklace with a vial on their chest, and when they walked by really bad areas of the city, they would smell this perfume or something that would, in some cases, keep them from just passing out. It was that bad of a smell. You have dead bodies, you have shit and piss. Now, when a body dies, the muscles in their anus relax and they shit themselves. That happens a lot with dead bodies. So, when Beth and Noah got down the elevator shaft, there should have been a nasty smell, and I mean so nasty that it should have been reflected. And I'm sick of simple things like this making it past creative teams that should not let subtle things like this go by. I mean, they're dropping all these Easter eggs, you know what I'm saying? There's clock references and everything like this. I mean, umbrellas in different areas, paintings, and all this other crap. There's so many Easter eggs. They get all these Easter eggs, but they can't get the stench of a dead body. But besides that little problem with the bad smell, I do love the lighting. When she runs outside, her and Noah both, the light just hits her in the face and it kind of blinds her. I love that because that's real. That happens in real life. And I love that she still has the ringing in her ears. If you shoot a gun off in a building, especially like a factory or a warehouse, something where it can reverberate, the sound, something where it can just make your ears ring in that tone for a long period of time. She comes out, she's got this ringing, she's fuzzy, it slows her escape down, it makes it somewhat more realistic. when you run out into the sun from a dark room, it does kind of burn your eyes, and it takes a while for your eyes to readjust. So that makes it believable her getaway was hindered somewhat by all of these factors. And to finally be tackled and witnessing Noah escape, and she shares this paralleled smile that Herschel shared before the governor chopped his head off, which is kind of a scary foreshadowing if you think about it. And I do feel that she took a great deal of happiness away from helping somebody who's been a prisoner pretty much for an entire year. I believe he said he was there for a year. She helped him escape. And guys, I didn't skip the foreshadowing if you're a comic book fan of what Noah said with the city with high walls. We will talk about that in an upcoming prediction video, so keep an eye out for that. And also, Beth was happy that the cop was wrong. For once, somebody wasn't saving Beth. For once, Beth saved somebody. Almost throughout the entirety of that escape, the only thing Noah did to help was to help lower her down. Pretty much she did everything else after that. So she did help Noah escape. But I want to go back now to the two biggest problems of this episode. Now, I believe that the most important scene in this episode is when a defiant Beth lashes out at Don Lerner after the failed escape. Don then turns around and beats Beth. It looks vicious because she's got a crack on her head later on and she's got all this bruising, but we don't see any of it. This beating, I can't believe they didn't show it. They cut it off right before she got cracked. This beating could have been the game changer, especially for the Beth haters. I guarantee you if they showed Beth get cracked in the head, stumble backwards, kind of out of it because that split her head open, and then Don lays into her with a few punches to the face. Beth goes to her knees, tries to defend herself, but she's so out of it that she's just getting pummeled in the face. Maybe she falls on the ground and gets kicked a few more times. I bet you any money if you did that slow, no music, just hear the packing of flesh, a real punch, not that slap or crack or bang that they do in the movies a lot of times, but do a real thud kind of sound. Yeah, like that. Yeah, that's how punches really sound. That sounds brutal. If you would have done that and just take your time with that scene and just let her get her ass whooped, people would have just been like, oh, that's too far. And people would have really turned around on that. I truly, truly believe that 100%. I believe you could have at least took a great chunk out of the Beth haters and turned them around to being compassionate and caring for Beth now. To the mother of all screw-ups inside this episode, it was actually the most shocking scene in the episode. Carol being brought in at the very end. It was leaked everywhere, and it did not look like the studio cared whatsoever. I have a theory on why. I believe that the Beth standalone episode made AMC nervous. They had very high ratings for the first episode and the second episode. They knew that the ratings were looking pretty dim because everyone knew, or everyone was starting to realize, that the fourth episode was going to be a Beth Bottle episode, and there was not a lot of hype. They needed more hype. So what they did was pretty smart, but I think it was the biggest mistake they ever made, and they should never make another one like this. They took a character who is on fire right now. After Carol became the Terminus Terminator, she's on fire with the fans, so what they did, they leaked footage of Carol in the episode to get fans excited and hyped and riled up so they can help kind of pull the ratings in a little more. It's a ratings game. I feel like they failed, and it should have left that a complete shock. And for some comic book fans, I want to throw this out there. Did any of you guys see a similarity between the person who used to run the hospital previously? Think about this. In the comic book, when Rick and them get to Alexandria, the guy in charge, Douglas, right? He tells them a story about the guy who used to run things. His name was Davidson. Remember, they don't talk about Davidson anymore. Davidson kind of lost his mind, went a little crazy, and got a lot of their people killed. So what Douglas did is he took Davidson, put him on the other side of the wall. He said, if you come back, I will kill you. So he pretty much believes that Davidson is dead. Now look at the story with Don Lerner. She had an officer she was following. His name was Hanson. He kind of lost his mind. She killed him, took over the hospital. It's way too similar for them to actually do that again, I believe, in Alexandria. I don't believe they're going to do that. So I'm predicting now, I think we're going to have a different backstory for Alexandria. If you're a comic book nut, let me know what you think of that down below. Alright, Deadheads, if you haven't seen the reaction video, it was funny. I kept it at 3 minutes, no more. You can click that down here or find the link in the description below. Most importantly, the prediction video that will be up tomorrow within 24 hours of this video. Thank you very much for allowing me to explain my position on this video and tell me what you feel about the rating. Keep in mind, this is a peaceful community we have. If we're gonna be ugly with each other, let's leave that on Facebook. And as always, if you have a question you want to add into the Q&As. Any questions now will probably make it to Q&A 8, 9, or 10, something around there. Go ahead and leave them down below. Make sure that the first thing in your comment is Q&A. Alright, Deadheads, you know what to do. I'm done talking. It's your turn. Does that annoy you, the finger thing? Subscribe now.